It's over.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Richard, you could make that so that the main screen shows the largest instead of the tiles. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to our Environmental Sustainability Forum on the topic of invasive species management. My name is Christine. I'm an environmental planner for the Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments, or NVCOG. We are a regional organization that serves 19 towns in West Central Connecticut. At this time, I guess because we're looking a little sparse up here, I'd invite anyone sitting in the chairs back here to come up and join us at the table if you'd like. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. As I'm sure you heard, this is being recorded. Please note that those two owls right here on the table pick up audio and visual. So if you are in the back of the room and want to make a comment or something, just kindly stand up so it can recognize you. Today's lunch has been provided by Lebon's. Water and tea are also available over here behind me. And with mindfulness to our environmental sustainability mission, you are eating a fully vegan lunch today. Thank you for participating in this. You're making a much smaller impact on the environment and on the planet by eating vegan today. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us virtually and in person. Please let us know if you can't hear us clearly or anything virtually. We want everyone to feel welcome like they're in the room. Let's talk about invasive species. So part of the evolutionary process, of course, involves plants and animals moving to non-native ranges, which happens across thousands of generations. But since the age of exploration, humans have unfortunately been speeding up these biological migrations. We've had pilgrims and pioneers introducing livestock and crops or plants into the so-called New World, sometimes intentionally and sometimes unwittingly. One example is mugwort, which was once used medicinally and introduced for that reason, but now it's quite the opposite as it just seems to cause us allergies. We have other cases where seeds and critters have hitchhiked their way in ballasts of ships, in treads of tires, across countries, and even across oceans. Another example would be water chestnut, which travels between isolated water bodies by clinging on to boats. In all cases, invasive species disrupt ecosystems. They outcompete natives for resources. They can lower biodiversity and even damage property and human health. Anyone who's dealt with invasives knows that it is rarely a single season ordeal. And in fact, even entire teams of Parks and Rec staff often have a real battle on their hands. That's why we've assembled a team of anti-invasive warriors today to help us learn more about how we can turn the tide against these invaders. We're very pleased to welcome the following speakers. We have Peter Picone here in person today, a wildlife biologist from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We have Rebekah Wallace joining us virtually from the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. And we also have Rose Hiskes, a diagnostician from the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station, as well as UConn's Connecticut Invasive Plant Working Group, or CIPWG. Afterwards, we'll invite questions and ask all of you to share your experiences and of course, all of you online as well. Let us know what you want to talk about. With that, I'd like to welcome everyone here on behalf of our Executive Director, Rick Dunn, and I will turn it over to Pete to get us started. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I only have 20 minutes to discuss a topic that would take quite a long time, so I'm going to get right into my slide. I have a handout. Virtually, you probably have it as well. There's 4 pages. There's basically any plant that I talk about that's native is on this list. It's listed seasonally from winter, spring, summer, winter, fall, all the seasons of the year and in between. And then the last sheet is the 97 invasive plants of Connecticut. Now I manage state lands west of the Connecticut River. I work for DEEP and I'm a habitat biologist. So I'm going to talk about plants, and invasives is our topic today. And I'll be showing you some slides and then a few video outtakes as well. If you are interested in a checklist of of our native plants, this book right here, by the Connecticut Botanical Society. I make it available. It'll be online, in my slideshow. You can go back and get specifics about it. But really good ones. It's that list of all the plants in Connecticut. Okay, I'm gonna get right into my slides. Oh, yeah, I gotta share my screen. That would help. Okay, let me do that. Right, okay, that's good. All right. So I'm gonna start my talk with a positive note. All I know is that when I started in this field, there was 0 nesting bald eagles in Connecticut. And today we can celebrate 70 nesting pairs in Connecticut, which is a huge testimony to how people wanted the environment to get cleaned up. And we made it to this point where we have 70 nesting pairs. So the environment that doesn't have that DDT building up in the fish, and the eagles are able to nest and hatch out their eggs and raise their young. And it's so thrilling for me to see that. As a kid, I never saw nesting bald eagles. And now being here in Connecticut and hiking and canoeing and walking our woods, you see bald eagles flying over and nesting here. So that's because people wanted it. Now, this is a charismatic megafauna, I call it charismatic, right? People are excited about our birds of prey. Plants are not as charismatic, right? They don't really fly around and be beautiful. They're kind of sit there, but they have color, they have flowers, they have berries, and they provide a sustenance to our, not only us, we can use plants for food, but animals need them for their survival. And so habitat is very, it's important to have good plants out there. So the invasives take away from that. So we're looking to galvanize people to make a better habitat for wildlife. Just like we brought back the eagles, we can bring back good habitat by not planting invasives and knocking out the invasives, planting more natives. 2 things are going to reduce the biological diversity of our state: habitat loss. But surprisingly, people don't know that the second greatest threat is invasive species. And it was something that has creeped up on us. People didn't realize we lost, the elm sealing lost all their American elm, right, on the streets because they had planted, and then we got this exotic insect that killed it. That was one disaster. Then we lost our American chestnut, right? People know that. Those are examples of loss of invasives. And then if you choose to plant things like purple loosestrife or any invasive plant, you can start this spreading, right? Mugwort was mentioned earlier. Same thing, good intentions, and then they start spreading. So invasives are the second greatest threat. We only have 3 million acres in Connecticut, and every place that these invasives are taking over, they're reducing the native plant populations. So what is going to be the future of our landscape? I know that one thing, if you plant a native tree, shrub, wildflower, or native grass, you can make a difference. Like right now, you could go somewhere that you either have permission to plant or your own place, and you plant a native tree, like a native shrub, plant a native grass or wildflower. Just that one action, believe it or not, will make a difference. But if you plant a community of plants, then we're gonna, I'm only gonna be able to give you 3 examples of managing invasives because we only have 20 minutes, and I want to get through that. But you can make a difference. So it's a concrete way to make a difference. I love Connecticut. I was born and raised here. I'm fortunate to work here as a biologist. The reflection of the land in the fall, when you see all that beautiful color, the bright reds and the oranges, the yellows and the purples, it's a reflection of the richness of the native plants. And if you observe some of the exotic species, now everybody gets excited to see a burning bush. And then they start saying, well, I'm going to buy a burning bush because it's got the beautiful red. They forget that when they look in the landscape, there's beautiful reds like the high bush blueberries and the staghorn sumac and the chokeberry and all these. There's a whole list of plants that make beautiful red color, and they're out there. So we need to think about the habitat as well as what we care about. But the landscape, what's going to happen to this beautiful landscape if we don't consider native plants? What's in the understory? Are there all Norway maples under there? Are there all, exotic species that are gonna take over that beautiful land. So what's at risk is our land, not only, it will not be as colorful if we choose to allow the non-natives take over. So we need to know what's in our toolbox. Well, how can we fix what's going on? We need to know how many plants we have. There's about 2,800. So in this checklist, you can find that, and I round it down so that we can remember. 2,800 plants make up the environment, different plants, okay, that are here in Connecticut. There's 1,800 rounded down that were native. These native 1,800 plants are the ones that co-evolved. From the simple example of an Asclepias, the milkweed providing the larval food for the monarch butterfly, that's one connection. It's inextricably linked. That's one example. But there are dozens and dozens of examples of native plants being inextricably linked to the wildlife. So anytime that these 1,800 native plants exist, and there's plant communities with many different ones together, it creates a good biological environment. So think about these 1,800 native plants when you think about planting a place. There's 1,000 introduced, right? And that gives you the 2,800. And so these 1,000, some are well behaved, like a bugle pine. You plant the bugle pine, doesn't go anywhere, which stays where you plant it. But you plant like purple loosestrife, and there's 1 million seeds that are gonna get transported out there. Where you plant an autumn olive, you'll have 60 pounds of fruit being distributed, or the 97 are identified in Connecticut, 97, and they're on that list, are invasives. They don't behave. You plant them, they either disperse by wind, animals, natural processes, rhizominously. So the 97 are the ones. So I'm gonna give you examples of 4 invasives that I do a lot of invasive plant management, so I'll try to boil it down to that. But before I do that, I just want to share with you a little video I took. I'm typing on my computer. It was a January cold day. And here's our Connecticut state bird chipping the ice to get to this winterberry, this native winterberry. Native winterberry, there's males and female. The female produces the berry. And here it is chipping its way through the ice. Now, that's just one example of the challenges that wildlife have on the landscape. You can plant winter persistent berries that are native to Connecticut, like this winterberry provides food for our turkeys and our migratory birds that leave and then come back to Connecticut, especially now in the spring. So think about planting native. I planted that one in the mid-90s, and now it's cloned, it's beautiful thicket. There's catbirds that nest in it once in a while. Really a neat spot right outside my window at Sessions Woods. Then in the fall, the same window, same spot, I watched this bluebird in the fall eating the same berry. It wasn't frozen time then, it was just time that they're fattening up for the winter, they're fattening up for the fall. So you can make a difference for wildlife, one plant at a time. Got the Connecticut flag in the background there. You can't make that up. It is what it is, right? The video I took right outside my window. And here, so I already talked about, you want to get materials like this plant list and the invasive list so that you can make good decisions when you decide to plant things. And now I want to just focus on 4 examples of invasive management. I work at Sessions Woods Deep Property, so it's a wildlife management area. It's different than a park. It's a wildlife management area. Our priority is wildlife, so we try to create the best habitat we can. But we also have 3 miles of graveled walking trails. We have the Blue Trail is on the property as well. So there's a lot of neat places to visit there. And it's on Route 69 in Bristol. Well, it's right on the Bristol-Burlington line between Burlington and Bristol. And you can visit it. It's a really neat place we have also a conservation education building Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4 that you can visit inside. But outside it's beautiful as well. Any time of the, up until sunrise to sunset. There's some of the overhead, the trails there. We want to maintain a biologically diverse property. I wrote the 10-year plan for it. And then we want to educate the public there. So you're welcome to visit and learn more. And then we want people to walk there, provide recreation, right? Walk and bird watch and enjoy. So this is an aerial photo of our property, and we did an inventory of all the plants in the plant communities there. And these little red dots, there's 13 invasives that made up our property, and we had to prioritize which ones we were gonna knock out first. And I'm gonna select a subset of these to share with you. And these are like tumors on the landscape. You gotta, if you excise them out, you'll let the native vegetation take the place. A study that I want to just share before I start into my talk is University of Delaware did a study where they looked at invaded areas and non-invaded, and they actually found that there's more caterpillars in the non-native, in the native sites that feed the animals, that feed the birds. And so the invaded sites had fewer caterpillar species, and it made it less biologically diverse. So if you can improve a site and make it more native, you'll have better food for our birds and our wildlife. And then this is the only other really busy graph. It's not, you got time, maybe I should do it here. You have time and you have abundance. If an invasive is early in its establishment down here, and there's few, if you knock them out early, you prevent them from spreading, even get bigger. But a lot of times people take action when there's too many, and that makes it a bigger job. So if you can learn to identify invasives when they come in at the early stages, there's only 97 of them. You're better off hitting them early, getting them early. Okay, so that's the message there. And I use this in the back of my mind all the time. I think about, if there's an invasive, can I get it early in its time? So the first example I want to share with you is the winged euonymus. And this is an aerial photo of Sessions Woods. That's the building. This patch of understory of invasive winged euonymus, basically the birds eat the berries in the neighborhood, and they roost in the trees, and the droppings fall into the forest, and they start germinating. And yeah, they look pretty. They're red, but look they took over the whole understory. And the deer aren't good enough they don't shoot them down to the point where they don't exist anymore. So they can literally become a full understory mat, and it suppresses the growth of the native species. Okay, so what do? So we want to suppress these plants and try to knock them out. This little corky bark here, part of the wing, and then they do have these berries. So because we're getting them early, there's not a big establishment. We're able to rip them out, and we're able to shake out the soil and then put them upside down in trees. So most of our work with the winged euonymus is ripping them out, physically pulling them out. I might use a pickaxe to loosen them up, and then I try to pack the soil back in. And then if I cut any 1 inch or bigger, we do judiciously use a chemical called triclopyr, brush begone, where we paint it on the stem so that it absorbs into the roots and it won't let it resprout. So you could either use dye if you want to put some dye in it to see where you placed it, but it's important that we definitely don't like to leave a cut stump untreated, because it'll just regrow. So that's up to you if you want to use, by using the label selective herbicide. And of course, this is not burning bush. This is our beautiful high bush blueberry. If you start looking around the environment, you might say, wow, look at that burning bush. And then you go look a little closer, it might be a high bush blueberry in the forest, in the swamp, or on the edge. So think about the beauty of our native species. Here's one in front of my yard that I planted. This was on a beautiful countryside on the east side of Connecticut. I would happen to be driving by that is a beautiful native high bush blueberry that somebody planted probably over 40 years ago. But beautiful. And so they do have beautiful color. So not only can you pick your berries for your muffins and your pancakes, but look at that beautiful color. Now, do we think of buying blueberries for our landscape? Only those who are into naturalistic landscaping and care about the environment think about. So I have several planted for myself that I put nets over, and then I have many for the wildlife. So and then the beauty of that. So if we think about the ecological value of things, not just how we, what does it provide for me? That's what we always think about. What does it provide for nature? So if we balance those two ideas, you can make a better habitat. The second example is a early detection rapid response is invasive Japanese spiltgrass. And I was noticed this really weird green patch. And I went up to it, looked at it and said, oh, wow, how did this patch get here? And it was the Japanese spiltgrass. And Japanese spiltgrass is an annual, so you can rip it up and not let it go to seed. It's pretty easy if you catch it early. If you don't catch it early, and here's the diagnostic, it's got a white white vein on the leaf, and it's asymmetrical blade, so it's a little bit longer on one side, but it's an annual, so it has to seed in. It could literally become this disaster if you let it go. So if you can find it early, learn what it looks like, you could possibly prevent it from getting overly aggressive in the understory. Because it's an annual, you could use more organic techniques to kill it because an annual can be killed with the vinegar compost. If you look up how to create an organic herbicide, unfortunately, perennials, it doesn't work for perennials, but it works for an annual like this one. So that is an option for you. If perennials, unfortunately, won't kill perennials like the organic vinegar, but you could use it for this. The important thing is never let it go to seed because it'll seed in, and that's, so if you keep removing it, you'll reduce the seed population and you could rip it out. Okay. When that's an invasive. Now, there's plenty of native grasses that I encourage you to think about planting, whether on a small patch or a big field. And these are the native grasses of Connecticut. These are only 4, and they're so valuable. Here is deer tongue grass, and here's what it looks like in the winter. Here's a junco that's going to climb up this deer tongue grass. It's a bunch grass. It's native to Connecticut, and here it is going up there. It's going to eat the millet seed that's at the tip. It has 2 leaves that cover its seed. They're literally little millet seed size seeds, and there it is eating the millet seed. It's persistent into the winter, where they start in the fall through the winter. Native grasses provide seed that's important for our birds, but the cover that it provides too. Because it's a bunch grass, other things can grow around it. It's not like a lawn where it's, a turf where nothing can grow in the middle of it. Native bunch grasses, they have one clump here, one there, and in between is your wildflowers. So they don't usurp the whole area to itself. So that's what's really advantage with these native grasses. If you notice little blue stem, these turkeys are stripping the little fluffy seed. When I took this video, I didn't know what they were doing, and I finally studied the video better. And they're stripping the little fluffy seeds off of the little blue stem and filling their crop. It's very important. And then you see these nooks and crannies, all these little spaces, so important to have their habitat. And they're really beautiful visually. If you plant native grasses, the copper color, the bronze color that it provides in the fall is really spectacular. And then anytime you can plant native wildflowers in your fields, like evening primrose, things like the indigo bunting and the goldfinches, they love it. The other invasive plant, now I'm going to share a personal example. My family and I, we have managed our own land, and cutting out Oriental bittersweet is a can-do project. Done it at Sessions, but we didn't have as thick of Oriental bittersweet as I did on our land. And I wanted to share with you, Oriental bittersweet, it does provide berries, but these berries are nothing compared to the damage that it does. You see all those vines that it can literally pull down trees from the weight, it'll strangle trees and distort trees. Managing them is really valuable. If there's a plant that you have on your land that you can make a big difference, is this one here. by cutting and painting the stems, and I'll share with you what we did. You don't want this to happen where there's a black cherry that's been destroyed. When you cut you could use a bow saw. Sometimes you use the big pruning loppers, or you could use, in this case, I had to use a chainsaw, like 5 or 6 inches diameter. But after you cut, I always recommend that you spread the triclopyr on it so that it prevents this. See the resprouting here? See the resprouting? By putting the triclopyr, you help reduce that. And also, later in the summer, if you do it midsummer, late summer, it'll translocate into the roots. But you prevented all that biomass from growing up into the canopy. Here you can see the fruits of our labor, where you can see that some of these trees were covered with maybe 80 or 90% bittersweet, some were 70%, some were 50, 60%. Once you cut those out in 2 or 3 years, this all falls out, and then it revives the trees that you've helped unravel and give life again. So it's very worthwhile. And we've cleared about 8 acres worth of that, where it was concentrated on our land, and on state land, I do the same thing. We knock them out, paint the stems, and you can make a big difference. Oriental. 3 minutes, okay. So I have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna really rapidly, I'm almost done. I would recommend making a simple map of your property, or where you, not just your property, wherever you can manage. You have permission, you say you delineate it. You got apps, Go Botany, you've got iSeek, you've got all these neat apps now. You can identify those little circles are all the canopy size. If it's a tree or a shrub, relatively make the canopy size on you don't have to be a landscape designer, just need to identify where they are. And then your red dots are all the invasives. And then you want to make a little plan. You want to put this on your refrigerator, your sketch. You got to be a little creative, but it's fun to do because it's going to take you a few years. You're not going to do it all in 1 year, but every little step you make will make a difference. So make this little plan, inventory what you have, and plot it so that you can. Now you can have a professional make this for you, but I think the easier the map that you can read and then create the area that you're managing, whether it's an acre, a quarter acre, an acre, 5 acres, you make this map. I have a little publication that can go online. Back in '95, I wrote, it's called Enhancing Your Backyard Habitat. I don't have any copies anymore in print, except for these 2 right here. So, but you can they're PDF online, so you can Google it and get it. And make sure when you think about your land, you think from the spring through the winter. Okay, so the handout I gave you ideas for each one of these categories. So think about making what's available in the spring for wildlife, what's available in the summer, what's available in the fall. And do I have native grass and wildflowers? Do I have winter persistent foods on my land? Do I have evergreen cover? And then observe nature. Believe it or not, by observing nature, it'll tell you a lot. Like just watching that bird pecking through the robin pecking at the winterberry, and then watching the bluebird eat it. Just observe nature. The junco that was climbed up that grass to eat the seed. Observe nature tells you a lot. And learn to predict those animal interactions. And prioritize your invasives. Like, so you might have bittersweet on your property. You have all these different, like I had 13 invasives in Sessions Woods. I prioritize which one we're gonna get first. When we get more help and more resources, maybe we'll attack the other ones. Like we haven't killed all our Phragmites yet because it's just tougher. It's in the swamp, and you gotta have you gotta be ready for it. Canoes, the right kind of materials, chop out the seed heads, challenging. And then the last thing I want to say, so you make notes of those locations. So I hope with the tips that I've shared with you today, the examples I think whether you tackle one invasive, make that a priority, and you start doing it, and then plant some native plants in your area. Whatever management steps you take, you will make a difference. I hope that I've given you shared some information that will help you make that leap of faith to manage invasives and encourage the natives. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Pete. That was fabulous. So I'm sorry, just in the interest of time, I want to move on to our next presenter, who is Rebekah Wallace. So actually, I feel like Pete sort of queued it up nicely because she's going to talk about some mapping applications you can use to make a plan, just like Pete talked about. So we'll invite Rebekah to share her screen.
All right, can you see that? Should be EdMaps. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Hi, Rebekah Wallace. I'm gonna go a little fast and I'm gonna skip some very basic things that you can just find on the website very easily to get to some of the more advanced things that people may not be familiar with. EdMaps for reporting invasive, pest, and actually also biocontrol agents, either releases or observations. If you want to do just biocontrol work, I recommend our iBiocontrol app. But for the most part, what I'm going to be talking about is relevant to invasive species reporting. Like I said, we also do pest reporting too. So if there are some things that are native to one area of the country, but invasive to another, to your area, that's kind of a big deal to your area. So we do have that type of reporting as well. You can report through the website. It's a much more comprehensive form. A lot of people still report through the website, but probably what a lot of our audience today does is, I'm out in the field doing my job. I need to have a tool out in the field. So I'm going to show two apps in a little bit to help you with either your own reporting or if you like manage volunteers, things like that. We have our distribution maps. I'll just very briefly show what those look like just so you can go, ah, yes, very interesting. So I'm just going to pick Japanese honeysuckle. It's a big deal down here. And we have county level maps. The maps do include the county maps, and the point maps include Canada. So you can go, ah, yes, our neighbors to the north, they have issues as well. And if you know, you can see the presence. We have a few different options of county level maps, including some maps for certain plant species for modeling efforts that were done to understand where these species either might be in the future, might be compared to now. You can play around with those when you have time. The point map will only have records that have point level data. So we do have records that you'll go, oh, if you look at like the Kogon grass map, you're gonna go, ah, there's a lot of Kogon grass, but then you look at the point level map and you're like, that doesn't match up because a lot of Kogon grass occurs on private property. And so they'll show our data, but only at the county level. So that's another thing. If you guys do work on private land, we do have where you can report, you have those coordinates, but to the public, it's just at a county level. I'm going to pop over to our tools page. So under tools and training, you'd pick tools. We have a couple links on here I want to go over real quick. We have our advanced query tools. So if I click on that, there's a walkthrough that tells you what every single field is and how to interact with it. But you can query the data in the database to kind of see what's going on there. So let's say I want to look at Connecticut. I want to look at what's going on in Connecticut in, let's say, Middlesex County. I really want to point out this other geographic locations. So the other stuff up here, we've had it forever, but other geographic locations, I think people miss out a lot on. So if I click on other geographic locations, it pops up with what's oftentimes public lands. Now, these are records that show up on different public lands. Let's try this wildlife management area, see if there's any data in there. And there's not. That's the hazards of doing this. So let's try again. Let's just go back to Middlesex. And let me see if I can find something kind of big. For a park. Maybe there's something in one of these parks. Just
Go to Higbee, go to Higbee Reservoir. If it, oh, okay.
Higbee Mountain.
Higbee Mountain, yes.
Okay, let's try those two. Thank you. I do not live in Connecticut. So what I'm trying to show, which isn't turning out very well, unfortunately, is the data in EdMaps is run through several 100,000 geographic layers to result in, I'm just going to pick, I know there's a park in my county I have mapped in, so this will actually show up. And it'll show up like all the records that fall in that area. So in this case, there's 7 records in this particular park. Most of them are mine. So that means if you work for some sort of, like I said, these are mostly public lands. You can see, okay, these are the records that fall in my particular area of responsibility. And with these links up here, CSV, KML, shapefile, that's the way you can download this data. The other thing I can do is I can save this query. Say this is a query I run a lot. So I'm going to say Fullwood. I think I've saved that one several times. I can save this query. And if I go to my EdMaps, which you have to have an account for, of course, because this is my EdMaps, not just generic EdMaps. If I go to, on the left here, my saved queries, you'll see, where did it? Oh, it's on page 2. There's Fullwood 1. That's what I just saved. And if I click this, it'll run it again. Or I can delete it if I don't actually need it anymore, or my query has changed, and so I need to change that. Or I can also create a new data set. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about, there's a lot of more in-depth information and help with our training page. So I just went to tools and training. I clicked on training. There is a lot of help on this training page. There's videos, there's PowerPoints, there's PDFs, there's walkthroughs, there's all kinds of stuff. I really recommend checking out our training page. There's even very specific iPhone versus Android versus general, using the website, whatever, videos and trainings. I'm just going to go back to my EdMaps because this is where a lot of the, okay, now I'm really going to get into this. Now I'm really going to work on this, do work essentially. So if I look on the left here, there's at the top different types of dashboards. There's your My Dashboard, which is what you land on. This is my data, my reviewed data, the data I expect other people to be able to see. So I can, see I've made 122 county level reports, 54 point records and so forth. This is my information, what I've been reporting. The verifier dashboard, all the data that goes into EdMaps has to be reviewed by someone, an expert, for it to become publicly available. This is a quality control thing. You sign up to be a verifier, or you're recommended to be a verifier, things like that. There's a request to be a verifier link on the left here. And we work with you and with our partners to figure out who the best verifiers are. Then there's also the EdMaps dashboard. This is visualizations of reviewed data in EdMaps, and you can set different parameters, and this will provide you maps. It'll provide you top reported species. So if you want to go in and say, well, what's going on in my county? You can add those parameters at the top, and it'll change all this information. You can see who's reporting in the county, what species are being reported in the county. It's a little different from the advanced query tool because you get all these graphics. And the other thing you can do is you can download this information to a PowerPoint. There's a button on the right here. So you can drop it into a PowerPoint and present it. And there you go. So it's that easy. let's go back to on the left here, we've got my reports and my revisits. So with EdMaps, as a platform, you can revisit existing records. So if you're going back out to a property time and time again, you're managing different populations of invasives time and time again, you're actually revisiting those populations. So instead of having points on top of points on top of points on our map, we recommend revisiting records so you get a site history of what's going on for that population. You can revisit your own records and you can revisit other people's records. You can only revisit records that have been reviewed and made publicly available. You can't revisit records that you shouldn't even really be able to see to begin with. We have bulk upload. So if you've been working on an area for a while, you've got Excel records, you've got ArcGIS files, and you want those to be in EdMaps, you can submit those records, you can submit those files. I'll work with you on getting those into the EdMaps database, and then you can interact with them on EdMaps. The next few things, let me jump to projects. Projects, say you have an area you're responsible for, you have other people who you want to contribute, or you're running maybe an invasive species awareness campaign or something. You have a grant and you want all the data from the grant to be associated together. Projects are a way to do two things. It allows you to associate data together that would be difficult otherwise. We don't have a way in EdMaps for you to say, data that's in my grant. So what you would do is you create a project, you'd invite people into your project, and as data comes into your project, then you get a project dashboard. You can see the records in this project. So let me go to, wrong way, example project, here we go. So I'm an admin for the example project. This is what I can see as an admin on this project. I can see records that have come in, subjects, who's reporting, species, things like that. I can email people who are part of my project. I can kick data out that doesn't belong in if someone accidentally reports something that isn't right for my project, all kinds of stuff. So this project is a good way, again, to associate data together. The other thing is that data in projects, the project admins can see information that isn't publicly available. People wanted a way for their employees to report, or their coworkers or whoever, volunteers to report data, but only the admin be able to see those coordinates, be able to see who's reporting that data. So people who are reporting private, people who are reporting anonymously, all of that information is actually going to still be available to the project admin. And we post everywhere, all over the project, that if you're reporting into this project, the admins will be able to see coordinates. They'll be able to see anonymous names, things like that. But again, it's just the project admins. Yeah, so that's what projects are. I thought that this group would really want to know about projects. There's a lot more information available about projects on the training page. I want to kind of end on the apps now, because a lot of the stuff I haven't talked about on the left has to do with Pro or the apps in general. So if oh, sorry, give me 1 second. All right, so on the left is the EdMaps app. This is the app that we expect the general public to use. And on the right is the Pro app. And you'll notice these are the home pages for these apps. And they're going to be different because Pro, we're expecting professionals to need a lot more features. They're going to need things specifically relating to filtering, data usage, data, using the app in no signal conditions, all of those things. On the left, this is definitely more geared towards, I'm the general public, I'm a citizen scientist, I'm someone who might have a little bit of interest in invasive species. I saw something. The app on the left, so again, the EdMaps app, they can at the top report something, they saw report something they didn't see. That's what a negative survey. I looked for and did not find spotted lanternfly, tree of heaven, garlic mustard, whatever. And then the upload queue is, I've been out reporting a lot. All of those records are on my phone. I made it back to the office, home, whatever. I'm going to submit them now. And then below, these are, it said plants, insects, and so forth. This is the field guide. The field guide is specific to each state. We've worked with partners in each state or region to, get an idea of what the species are that they care most about. EdMaps Pro does not have a field guide. It's a space, it started out especially as a space issue. The app is very small when you download EdMaps Pro. The things that take up space are data sets, background imagery, things like that. So the other thing is in EdMaps Pro, you can revisit in the app, you can revisit records in the app. You never have to leave the app. EdMaps app does not have that. We're not anticipating the average person walking around and going to be looking for existing records to check up on them. That tends to be more of a professional person. So I'm going to go back to the website now. So on the left, there's a few options I want to talk about. We have my species list. This species list allows you to report these species quickly and definitely in the EdMaps app as well as the EdMaps Pro app. The EdMaps Pro app, you don't have a field guide, which means you don't have a set species list. The species list in EdMaps Pro is defined by your My Species list and by the species list of any projects you have joined. So when you create this My Species list, and we go back to EdMaps app, adding a subject, you see the My List right here. That's your My List you created. The species list in the EdMaps Pro app, we're just gonna use my location to add a record. This is my list and my projects list. My saved queries, these records are not just for, oh, I want to see what's going on in my county. You can also use this data set in the Pro app, because if we go under the menu, there's my saved query sets. I mentioned using EdMaps Pro in low signal areas. You can download data sets and have them on your phone so that when you're revisiting those records, you're revisiting them because there's a static version on your phone. You can download county level data sets, but you can also download specific queries that you've created. So that, I don't need my whole Tift County data set. I want the Fullwood Park data set. I only want those 9 or whatever records. That makes that data set much, much, much smaller. So again, saving space on your phone. The other things, the EdMaps Pro tools. So there's 4 options here. Again, your My County list. I mentioned about county level data sets. The My County list also also says these are the counties that I care about, I have responsibility for, I'm moving in and out of, whatever. This is your data set that you can download in the app. This is also your background maps. So if you are going into areas with low signal, you're not going to have this background map. This is just because I currently have Wi-Fi or cell signal. If I go into an area without any background maps, I'll have these points because that's my static data set on the map. And I still have GPS signal, but I won't have signal for the background maps. So you can, when you set up your counties list, that's also the counties that you would potentially want background maps for. So photo projects, this is another EdMaps Pro thing. You have your area, you're in a particular site, you're looking at a field, there's 15 invasive species in this field. You want to take pictures to show change over time. That's what these photo points are. They're not tied to any specific record. They're just a visual documentation for you for a site change over time, essentially. So that's another thing in EdMaps Pro. Project areas, we're going to change this to something like My Boundaries. And what this allows you to do is either upload a KML or draw a KML. And it's just a visual representation on the map that you might need for something. So if I turn on my project for my Tifton area, my boundary, whatever I want to call it, I now have this yellow box here. And I can use that as, okay, this is the area I want to work in today. Or this is the area I absolutely should not go into because trespassers will be shot. It's just a way to have a representation on the map. It doesn't interact with the data at all at this time. But you can share the KMLs with different people. So you can say, okay, these group of volunteers are going to work over here in this KML. These group of volunteers are going to work in this other one. Going back to the website. And the other thing I wanted to mention, bulk revisits. If I work at a site, again, this is me, I'm at a site, I'm not pulling individual plants, maybe I'm doing roadside work and I am just spraying all along the roadside because the whole roadside is an invasive species, which we have all seen. I'm not going to revisit every single individual. A little bit further. There we go. I'm not going to revisit every single individual one of these spots. So I want to say I did the exact same thing to every record in this area. So here's Fullwood Park I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to say that in Fullwood Park, I was responsible for treating all of these plants in Fullwood Park. And so if I go down now, these are the plants that are in Fullwood Park. And I treated all of them. So I'm going to select all of them. And then I have this bulk revisit down here and I can say I treated all of these. This is the method by which I treated them. I click submit. All of those records now have a revisit record. They're going to have a revisit record for today saying these were all treated. That is a quick way of instead of doing constantly as you're going along, you can come back to the office, where you've done work kind of thing.
So Rebekah, if
yeah.
I could just interrupt for a moment. Thank you so much for this. We do want to make sure that Rose has enough time as well. So thank you so much. This is a great overview. And I do just want to ask really quickly, can you verify that this software is entirely free?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course.
Wonderful. I just wanted to make sure so everyone, no problem. So everyone, whether you're running a Parks and Rec department or whether you're just a backyard gardener, can use this software. So thank you, Rebekah. And I hope you will stay on with us for questions at the end.
Yeah, can I just add one thing real quick?
Of course.
In the app, when you have your data turned on for the records you've downloaded and you want to see in the Pro app, to revisit a record, you just tap on an existing record and revisit is in the pop-up balloon. That was one last thing I wanted to make sure was very clear about how revisits are done.
Awesome. And EdMaps Pro is free as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Awesome.
only things in that cost anybody anything is if they need a new feature added, then we work out how that'll get paid for.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Rose Hiskes. She is going to wrap it up by talking about botany, and I think she hopefully should be able to share her screen and get started. And are you able to go to presenter view, Rose? Or?
Hey. Hello, everybody. I am Rose Hiskes, and I work at the Ag Station in Windsor as a diagnostician. I've been a volunteer with CIPWG for since 2002. So my talk today, using botany to sustainably manage invasive plants, quickly realized I needed to maybe change the title to using basic botany to sustainably manage invasive plants. There's so much botany that I don't know. I'm really a horticulturalist, but so come along with me. I hope everybody has had a chance to look at this invasive plant management calendar created by Emmett Verricchio based on a survey given to attendees at our 2016 symposium. And on the left, you'll see the plants of concern. Japanese knotweed made the top slot. And then also going across are the months of the year, January through December. And below in the legend, you'll see that the light green marks are for flowering period, a botanical happening that we need to know about. There are 3 chemical options that we talk about with various plants: the foliar applications, cut and paint, and injection, and then also mechanical options for cutting, pulling, mowing, things like that. So as I go through some of the different plants, we'll use that chart. But botany, why would botany be important? We've had some missteps in the past. In 2000, Les Meerhoff needed to submit an article because Japanese stiltgrass had been misidentified as Learsia. Learsia is a native perennial grass. It's commonly called whitegrass. So perennial and Japanese stiltgrass, as we all know, is an annual. So you're going to treat that very differently based on that botany. Once you have an accurate identification, the next question is, do we have accurate life cycle information? Mugwort's been mentioned a couple of times, and it's been an agricultural weed in the state as long as I've been here. And but 5-7 years ago, it just exploded, started jumping spatial gaps, started jumping habitats into different habitats. Any highway you go down in Connecticut today, you're going to see mugwort. It was thought that the seed was not viable. And Jeff Ward at the New Haven station did some research, and it turns out that mugwort seed is viable. So we now need to think about 2 methods of reproduction for mugwort, not just the rhizomes. Okay, Japanese knotweed has an interesting past as well. In Europe, it's only has female flowers and therefore doesn't do any seed production. Here in the US, and specifically in Connecticut, we have a seed formation. So we do have Japanese knotweed that has perfect flowers and produces viable seed. And I'm sure some of you also remember the Morden's pink Lythrum issue. Coming out of Manitoba, this was supposedly a sterile plant, and we could plant it and not worry about seed production. But what ended up happening was, though it was a male sterile, the minute you planted it in the landscape anywhere near a purple loosestrife infestation, the pollen would come from the purple loosestrife and come over to this Morden's pink, and you'd be contributing to the invasiveness of Lythrum. Honeybees do love it, but as Pete said, we have a lot of other native plants that produce nectar and pollen for our bees. Okay, what are the plant life cycles? The annual plant life cycle, you seed to seed within a year, and then the plant dies. Right now, all our winter annuals, bittercress, whitlow grass, chickweed are setting up their seed, and they're going to die with the heat of summer. And then the summer annuals, right, our crabgrass, our lamb's quarter, ragweed, they're getting ready to germinate and will be dying in the fall after they flower and set seed. So with the annuals, we need to know, when is the seed mature? When will it germinate next year? And what is the longevity of that seed in the soil seed bank? Another life cycle, biennial, takes 2 years from seed to seed, and then the plant dies. Think garlic mustard, right? You have a basil rosette 1 year, the next year the plant bolts and flowers and goes to seed. Monocarpic perennial is one I learned when giant hogweed came on the scene. Here you have 3 years of a life cycle. The basil rosette is around for 2 years, and then that 3rd year the plant bolts, flowers, goes to seed and dies. In the perennial category, we have the herbaceous perennials, the spreading kind, think mugwort, solitary kind, think dandelion, and the infestations spread differently, grow differently. With a spreading herbaceous perennial, you're going to have a circle radiating outward is how the plant grows its population over time. And in solitary, you just have one here, one there, and there's no continuity to them. Woody perennials live for many years, have those two different growing points, the terminal ones that result in increase in height, and that second growing point is the cambial layer just inside the bark. And then one other thing, when we think about invasive plant management and botany, conducting systems in plants, I always think of it as a circle of straws. You're going to have 3 circles. The inward circle is the cambial or the division, where cell division happens. And the outward circle is going to be the phloem, which becomes the inner bark. And the inward circle of straws is the xylem, or the water conducting tissue. So in our perennials, in spring, the flow is generally upward from the roots. Water takes the carbohydrate reserves from the roots up to the leaves. And in fall, it's the reverse. All those good carbohydrates that the foliage has made during the season flows downward to the roots to be stored. So another botanical thing we need to know are how the plant reproduces and how it disperses those reproductive units. Seed, again, we need to know how long it's going to live in the soil seed bank, and there's amazingly disparate data about different plants with regard to that issue. More research is needed. How is that seed dispersed? Is it a wind dispersed? Is it birds, wildlife, streams, shoes? The rhizomes that we talked about, those underground stems that can produce a new plant at each node, how are they dispersed? Is it soil movement? Is it truck tires, shoes, water? Sometimes the mail truck, zoysia grass, moves through a neighborhood by the mailman's truck tires running over seed and moving it from mailbox to mailbox down the street. Stems can also root at the nodes. If you do a Japanese knotweed cut and you leave those stems on site, and we have cool, moist conditions and it's touching the ground, you might get a re-rooting. Stolons, think strawberries, some of the potentillas will send out those lateral stems and little plants that root and become reproductive units. All right, here's Japanese knotweed. This is one of our garden invasives. We brought it in. We thought it would be gorgeous at the back of the perennial border during August, September, when not much else is blooming. And now we pay a high price for that. This one, as you all know, spreading herbaceous perennial, flowers August into September. And we thought we had sterile female only flowers, but we do not. Now, so reproduction here is mainly by those rhizomes, but we do have some seed reproduction as well that we need to think about when we talk about management. Dispersal, the root pieces, and the seed is 3 sections, and it's when dispersed, it has a little wing on it that takes it off on the winds. So if we look at that invasive plant management calendar, we see that there's a foliar application period from August and September, and there's a whole group in Connecticut that is working with just cutting the knotweed and nix the knotweed. They're from Old Saybrook, Old Lyme area. And there's those 3 time periods, May to June, July to August, September to October. You cut the plants at ground level. Okay, so this is assuming it's not a very large infestation, and it's assuming that you have a lot of volunteers. Okay, so not every situation, this is not going to work in every situation. And you have to do that for 3 years. And then they were able to plant natives and not, they monitored the site and clipped off any knotweed that grew, but they were able to basically reestablish natives after that procedure, that 3-year procedure. The last line you'll see is the pink line there, and it's injecting chemicals, okay? Some of you may have access to that injector, and that is a neat way to do it. A lot of conservation groups, pulling parties do not have access to that. And I've talked with Diane Jorsey about the cut stump treatments that Peter was talking about, and some of that triclopyr products, the poison ivy brush killer can be cut. Once you cut the Japanese knotweed stems in that September, and you have the hollow stem between the nodes, you can do a cut and drip application of the triclopyr into that cup, again adding the blue dye so that you know which one has been treated. And DEEP does interpret that as a cut stump treatment, which is what is on that label. Okay, so cut and drip you can do for the Japanese knotweed as well. Here's a shot. I take a walk every morning along Cook Hill Road in Windsor here. And on the left there, you can see the mature Japanese knotweed population. And then below at the curb along the street, you see all these little plants. And when I took a top shot there on the right, you can see all the baby Japanese knotweed plants. Okay, so we do have seed production, viable seed production on Japanese knotweed here in Connecticut. All right, I'm going to skip this one in the interest of time and Pete covering it as well, right? All those beautiful, this is the botanical python aspect of Oriental bittersweet, okay? It strangles, it's doing its secondary growth, and that a sapling that it's on is also doing its secondary growth. I wanted to ask Les Meerhoff if that was perchance a Norway maple seedling, so we could see who would win, the bittersweet or the Norway maple. Didn't get a chance to do that though. So let's go on to a Japanese barberry. The common barberry is also on the Connecticut invasive plant list from Europe. The CCC back in the day was trying to eradicate common barberry because of wheat stem rust. Okay, so for Japanese barberry, this is a deciduous shrub. Flowers late April to June. Reproduction here is by seed, which is inside a berry, clonal shoots, as well as branch tips rooting when they hit the soil. So it's a more complicated picture. Turkeys love this, Les always said, but other wildlife and so on will eat and disperse the seeds. And so when you're looking at our management chart now for the Japanese barberry, it's the third one down there, you'll see the minute you have seed reproduction, you can always think about pulling the new plants, okay? Moist soil, we've had some rain. That is one way you can do management with seed plants that have seed reproduction. So on the barberry, pulling it any time of year that you can get out there. The cut and paint can also be done in barberry. And again, more effective toward the end of the season where the carbohydrate reserves are going down to roots and the herbicide gets sucked down into the roots at that time as well. And then you can do foliar applications of the triclopyr as well. So barberry, there's hybrids out there, the European, the common, the Japanese and the common. There's 1 spine per node for the Japanese. There's 3 spines per node for the European. And then there's a hybrid out there as well. Beautiful berries that the turkeys love. All right, garlic mustard. This is the last one I'll cover. Here we have the biennial, right? And so you're going to get seed production is the main reproductive method here. And it is an evergreen biennial, okay? We don't have many of those in Connecticut. Well, if we get snow in the winter, you can brush it aside and you will see green rosettes of garlic mustard through the winter. Todd Mervosh pointed out to me that some years, if it's a gray, cool year, garlic mustard can behave like a monocarpic perennial, right? These plants do not read our books and they respond to their environment. This year it was very interesting. I'm walking along the street here, and on April 12, I noticed, the garlic mustard under that Japanese knotweed was bolting. Okay, and then usually it's a week or so between. Well, the very next day, we had the white flowers, okay, because of that heat wave we experienced. And that blooming will continue through June. You saw in that previous slide, a healthy plant can produce 3,000 seed. And a lot of people have found out that if you pull the plant when it's white, showing color, and you put that in a bag and, throw it on the driveway to heat up and cook for a couple of days, that white flower will actually turn into the seed capsule in the pulled plants. There's enough reserves in that root system and in the stem, and the flower continues to develop into seed. So be very careful with plants. You can't just upend them and hang them on the tree like Pete was doing with his euonymus, okay, the burning bush, because this plant will develop and drop seed. Again, that same dispersal of moved on shoes, car tires, water. There's that green rosette that will be there all winter long. And here's the flower stalks. It's in the crucifer family, right? The 4 petals there. Some of those leaves would be great on a sandwich if you needed some spice, some garlic on your sandwich. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our 3 presenters today. I really appreciate it. All very different but interesting perspectives. What I wanted to do is certainly initiate the conversation and take some questions, but I believe we already have a variety of questions in the chat. So I was hoping we could just maybe scroll to the top and go through those, if you don't mind, Rich. I'll just read them out loud and okay. Good. So the technical difficulties. Okay. Is triclopyr legal to use on school property? Anyone want to hazard a guess at that?
Well, I would probably say that you check with the superintendent of the schools, because they have policies about dispersing chemicals and stuff, and janitors and stuff like that, that would probably rule out anything, whether you can use it or not. It would be the policy of the individual school.
Gotcha, individual.
I don't believe it's legal to use it.
There are state laws about what chemicals can be used on school grounds, and it's very restrictive. And I'm doubting that it can be, but I do not know that for sure.
Thank you. This one I believe is for Pete. What suggestions do you have for prioritization?
Where do I space here?
Sure.
So for priority, every property is unique. Every property has, for example, I'll use an example. Housatonic River WMA, we had tree of heaven there, and it was dominant. And we decided that the footprint of that plant was so large on that property that we went after it. So we prioritize that as the first thing to go after. But every property is unique, so you want to assess what you have on your land. If your parcel, you say, okay, here are my top 5 invasives, quantity wise, and then you ask yourself, which ones do we have the resources, time, energy to attack and knock out? So priority will be property by property, and literally every property is different. You're going to have dominant species on different properties, so you want to prioritize the specific property you have, and you want to look at what is dominating the site, and then what are your resources to tackle it. So look at property by property and pick your top 5, and then figure out which ones you want to go after first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And that's how I think would be a good way to prioritize.
Great, thank you. So Robin asked, we're really struggling with goutweed at Bent of the River Audubon Center in Southbury. Would anybody be able to offer tips for removal and management?
So I don't have a lot of that plant at our WMA, so I don't have a lot of experience with that plant. Anybody else?
Rose or Rebekah?
I can work on that with Robin. Jatinder Alak is an herbicide specialist here at the station, and Todd Mervash, and there are some of us that can work with you, Robin, to get a goutweed management plan for your property.
That would
Great,
be
and when I send
amazing.
out the, oh yeah, thank you, Robin. When I send out the follow-up email to everyone, I'll include contact info if you want to follow up with any of the speakers. Is that okay? With
Yes.
everybody? Okay, awesome. Okay, wonderful. So Barbara asked, can Peter or Rose address how to get the CT Invasive Plants Council to proactively address and potentially invasive plants? Sorry, invasive and potentially invasive plants. Japanese barberry and Mangiuanus have been on the CT invasive plant list since 2004, but not prohibited from sale. Many hours are spent removing them every year, but now new ones are being planted, while UConn claims to have created sterile cultivars. If the non-sterile shrubs have been prohibited 19 years ago, we may not have the infestation yet today. How can we get the state to be proactive and stop invasives at an early point, as Peter recommended?
Barbara, we've been talking before. The Invasive Plant Council has gone through a period of change. The silver tsunami hit them as well as other state agencies. And I think right now they're at a good place where they are able to get a quorum and make some changes. And, you know, we've had some input from the nursery industry and I think I see some movement on their part. A lot of the plants that are not prohibited, but botanically on the list because of their characteristics have been issues with the nursery industry. So hopefully we're going to, you know, be able to make some strides now that the committee is back up to full strength, and they're usually getting a quorum at each of the meetings now. So I have hope for the future. I realize we're kind of behind the 8 ball because of that period of time where the council was not functional.
Thank you. We already said that EdMaps is free. Was on a Zoom with a Cornell professor saying how long-term recovery studies show land recovers faster if you do nothing to garlic mustard. Comments on that?
Okay, Brent Blasi spoke at our 2020 symposium on this very topic. And, you know, he recommended we all sit on a park bench rather than whole garlic mustard. However, the devil is in the details. His data shows that it's got to be at the site for 15 years before these negative soil feedbacks come into play. And for most of us, I think we're dealing with garlic mustard as it moves along a trail, as it moves along a walkway, a road, or new infestations. So I do have a handout from Bernd on his research was not at a layman's level, but I do have a sheet from him now that explains what he found that can be understood by most of us. And so, yeah, he says that if we don't pull it, but it takes 19, 20 years, guys. So you'll have to decide whether that's something you want to do. How big is your patch? How old is your patch? Maybe you shouldn't pull, but if it's a newer infestation and it's moving along a walkway, whatever, not a 3-acre field of it, then it's a different story.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Rose, yeah, a lot of times science throws these kind of curveball, and people are like, wow, you know, we don't have 15 or 20 years to wait for it to knock itself out, because especially if you have a priority area, if you have for example, we have fields that we were managing, meadows that we're creating, that were abandoned cornfields, and we're creating wildflower meadows. Garlic mustard is one that comes in early on. if you don't address it early on, when you first see it, it will expand dramatically. The 3,000 seeds per plant, that's not a joke, that's a lot of seed. So, I pull them when I see them, we treat them, we do find that after we treat, say, some of the invasives like, where we're knocking out, I lost track of right here, but if you remove one invasive, sometimes garlic mustard comes in because it has an opportunity to bear ground. So you gotta really be watchful after you do treat one invasive, that if there's bare ground, that's where garlic mustard likes to come in. And if you don't take care of it, it's a biennial. You really have a whole year to make a management decision on it. And if you wait for that second year, those 3,000 seeds are overwhelming. And then they stay in the ground 2 to 5 years. I'm not willing to wait 15, 20. Who has that kind of time? You know, that's like, so you really have to think for yourself on that one. I think that it's nice to think that it's gonna disappear, but in 19 years, but it's not gonna help you when you're trying to create that field and that environment, that biologically diverse area that you're trying to manage. So knock it out early if you see it. Any adult plant is 30,000, it's 3,000 seeds. You're willing to bargain having that dispersed. Then when you do your other management, it might end up getting in your bare soil that you created because you manage the other thing. I say knock it out whenever you can, and don't let it go to seed. Then, yeah, that's my
Thank you.
management, opinion.
All right, we have a question from a sister COG, Terry from CROG. Where can you get a good comprehensive list of Connecticut native plants, organic, non-GMO, and potential sources for purchasing? Well, I'll tell you that CIPWG has a great list right on their website. Maybe Rose could speak more to that. I'm not sure about purchasing sources.
There's a place called Pride Corner Farms. They're based out of Lebanon. They have lists like that that are online.
So I have good news for everybody. I teamed up with Connecticut, the Cooperative Extension Service, Vicki Wallace and Alyssa Miles and another person at office. We have just got all the survey data back from surveying nurseries in Connecticut. I used to have a list of native tree shrub availability lists that I would make available every 5 years. I'd update it. Well, we've just updated it. We reformatted it. It's going to be available both online and in limited hard copy. So stay tuned. You will see coming very shortly, like we're talking weeks from now, a list of cross-referenced what nurseries in Connecticut make native trees and shrubs available for the public that through a survey, through voluntarily participating companies. So that's very exciting to have that back. So that as soon as I'll link it to you guys and
Perfect. Yeah,
as soon as it comes out.
that's awesome. And finally up here, and then we'll give the in-person participants a chance. Can you compost burning bush?
That's a good question. So I've never pulled it up in the quantity that you would use it for composting. You gotta be careful in the fall if you cut it when the seeds are on the plant, that's the challenge. Do you bag it and then put it in the garbage? That's a big question. I like to make sure I cut it before the seeds are viable so that you can pile it up and compost it. But if you have viable seed, I gotta be careful that, so that if you get it before it becomes viable. It'll be before September. You want to cut them down before the seed is viable at the end of August at the latest.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And anyone in the room have questions or? Barbara?
Hi, Christine. So this chart says mugwort shouldn't be pulled right now.
I believe that's Rose's chart you're referring to.
Yeah,
Did you hear that, Rose, or?
Anytime you have a rhizomatous plant, it's not recommended to be pulling the mature plants, okay? Let's see, that dark blue line on the chart is for pulling seedlings only. Okay, once you try to pull something that's rhizomatous, either the Japanese knotweed or the mugwort, mature plants, you end up splitting the roots and getting more plants than you started with. So pulling seedlings, yes, that can happen throughout the year as you see them and as have time. Moist soil is always makes it easier. I do my little wiggle waggle first and then pull up and out. And that way you don't have reproductive units on the plant, like Pete was talking about with the burning bush. So pulling seedlings is a good way to go.
So right now there would be seedlings, like 3 inch.
Yeah, they're not up yet, but yeah, they'll be coming
Well,
early in the season, yes.
In Southbury, they're up.
Oh, well,
about
make sure
3.
it's not the, a new little one from a rhizome. You can wiggle, waggle and pull. And if you go back to mama, then you don't have a seedling.
Okay. And so then you shouldn't pull. What if you can't mow them because they've gotten into a bed? So at what point what do you
Okay.
do it?
So then you're probably down to the, even just, if it's in a bed of ornamentals that you want to save, then you're almost down to painting individual leaves, plants with the herbicide. Something that
vinegar?
is,
For vinegar, yeah.
this is a heavy duty perennial, rhizomatous perennial, and the vinegar works on the annuals, really.
Just want to give other people in the room an opportunity if you have questions or.
Well, in Middletown, our Public Works Department did a whole neighborhood of rebuild streets, sidewalks. The company brought in some manufactured soil and hayed it, seeded it, but the grass didn't grow. The only thing that came up was Japanese knotweed everywhere. And it quickly spread into the neighbor's lawn where it wasn't, where it was disturbed, where the soil was disturbed. So they had to come in and redo the whole thing over again, and they weren't really too happy about that. So that's one thing. And then in Middletown, we're also doing a timber harvest on one of our properties. And we want to salvage, some trees that are, oak and ash that are going. And we thought, we would go in and cut everything, but our tree guy said, no, you can't right now. You got to get rid of the invasives that are there, because if you open up that tree canopy, the invasives are just going to explode all over the property. It's a 75-acre property, so we don't want that. So the invasives really, we didn't think about that. So that's an issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple other maybe questions in here. Did we have one above that, Rich, or no? I haven't heard of, oh, okay, gotcha. Has anyone tried a nice deep 8-inch rototill on knotweed? Does it die or does it thank you?
No, it's that's not near deep enough for Japanese knotweed. Not gonna work.
Yeah. Those rhizomes, it's just like a utility line practically for
Yeah.
the plants.
Yeah. Yeah, and that sidewalk job, we actually pulled up, I pulled up like a couple of plants, and there was one tuber that was cut where they all came from. Like how did that happen?
Well, the difficulty with getting like stream topsoil, if you ever get it delivered, whether it's in your own yard or if you're getting it for a garden planting, or even if you're doing a tree planting, a lot of times you don't know what kind of seeds are hiding in
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I did it in my own personal yard last year. Thank God I was able to watch it. But after I put down like 6 yards of topsoil, I seeded it. I saw so much mugwort everywhere. So I'm on hands and knees, literally plucking up
Yeah.
all little baby mugwort. And then a patch of knotweed. And this is all from straight from the topsoil. So you gotta be really careful with what you get.
Oh, yeah, same with wood chips,
Yeah, wood chips especially.
wood chips,
Yeah.
Someone
There is
put wood chips on.
there is a sheet
that?
on CIPWG's website about moving around topsoil and fill that gives you some good advice about, you have to watch the pile before you buy it and just find out where it came from and you know, because so many root pieces can be in there, so much seed can be in there. And yes, you have to be very careful about buying topsoil, buying fill.
Okay, so to be mindful of everyone's time, I think we'll wrap up. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who came in person or who joined us virtually.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Please keep in mind that we have a quarterly environmental sustainability forum, so we'll have another one this summer. We're always doing different topics. I will send out an email with all the resources and contact info from today. And also a link so you can see our other recordings from the past. So once again, a huge thank you to our speakers today, and thank you everyone for joining.
Nice to see you still recording after.
Yeah.